So finally, does Russell solve this problem of the compatibility of our normal way of speaking about ethics, especially praising and blaming right and wrong conduct, or what he calls merit and demerit? Is this the compatibility of this with determinism? Well, maybe, but certainly not by advocating free will. Uh, Russell not only believes that ethics and determinism are compatible, but he believes that free will and ethics are not compatible. That is, he argues in several places that we have to believe that actions are effects of causes. Otherwise, we wouldn't even do the kind of things that we do. For instance, we wouldn't try to persuade somebody to act or not act in a certain way unless we believe that somehow or another we could influence, that is, have a causal connection between what we said or our actions and their actions. Also, we wouldn't, ethics would be impossible without determinism because we have to believe that there's a causal connection between our choices, that is, the courses of action which we choose, and certain effects, since, after all, right and wrong conduct are not determined by anything else but what the consequences are in terms of goods and bads. Has he actually solved the problem? Well, it's really it's up to you to decide that. Uh, Again, he does not believe that you need to have a full-blown doctrine of free will to have something like choices. To have something like a choice of actions, what you need are to be able to think of possible courses of action or alternative courses of action. And he says, certain point, let me find it. Says in section 25, if causality is doubted, morals collapse, since a right action, as we have seen, is one of which the probable effects are the best possible, so that estimates of right and wrong necessarily presuppose that our actions can have effects, and therefore that the law of causality holds. So for his own particular version of ethics, and especially of right and wrong conduct, there has to be a causal connection. There has to be the law of causality, or the principle of causality. In favor of the view that human actions alone are not the effects of causes, there appears to be no ground whatever except the sense of spontaneity. That is, in favor of the free will doctrine, all we have is a very vague sense that our actions are spontaneous. But the sense of spontaneity only affirms that we can do as we choose, and choose as we please, which no determinist denies. It cannot affirm that our choice is independent of all motives, and indeed introspection tends rather to show the opposite. That is, he does believe that we can do as we choose and choose as we please, but of course, to be able to choose means to have conception of different courses of action, and one would say that it is not possible to choose a course of action which you cannot conceive of or do not conceive of. So in a sense, the man, again, running out of the burning building without warning anyone is not free to choose the alternative of warning them because it never occurs to him. Russell seems to have solved this to some extent by saying that the reason that he does not conceive of the alternatives, is because of previous choices that he made. That is because of his character. For you and I, it's not possible right now to perhaps write a symphony or to paint a masterpiece painting. One may say that it's not possible for all sorts of reasons, and maybe one of the reasons is it was never possible. Maybe one of the reasons is because of choices we've made before. However, we do think that, normally speaking, it should be possible for us to, let's say, think of the welfare of others when we're considering what to do. And we actually expect people to conceive of those choices. And so if they don't conceive of them, in one sense, it's not possible for them to do those things. But in another sense, the reason that they don't conceive of them is because of previous choices that we've made. Now, there is a danger here, of course, of a kind of an infinite regress. Because if we say that it's not possible for the man running out of the burning building to think of alternative courses of action, that he just does what he does. Why do we say that in an earlier state it was possible for him to conceive of choices that he similarly didn't make that would have changed his character? I'm not sure that that's quite coming out, but it does seem to me that there's the possible danger of a circularity or of an infinite regress here, where Russell is just deferring the problem of how we ever make a choice for which we can be held responsible. But he does seem to be thinking of ethical action in terms of our capacity to conceive of different alternatives and to weigh the probable effects of our actions and to make the judgment in accord with these conceptions. Let's say in section 28, connected with this is another sense in which, when we deliberate, either decision is possible. The fact that we judge one course objectively right may be the cause of our choosing this course. Thus, before we have decided as to which course we think right, either is possible in the sense that either will result from our decision as to which we think right. This sense of possibility is important to the moralist and illustrates the fact that determinism does not make moral deliberation futile. I think what he's saying there is that one of the causes, you might say, and deterministic causes of our acting rightly, or of our acting at all, is our judgment that the course of action is a right one. That is, we act sometimes because we judge that that particular course of action is the correct one. So if we say that in the deterministic view of things, that is, the notion that all events are caused, one of the causes of our actions, this particular event of me acting in a certain way, is that I judge it to be the correct course of action, as opposed to others, which I could very well choose, but don't because of my judgment that they are not the optimal course of action. So this notion that free will is necessary in us in order for us to be said to be responsible for our actions in the sense of being praised or blamed, Russell rejects. One of the reasons is that, well, of course our actions are determined, and one way in which they're determined are by our judgments about which is right. And so at the same time we have something which fulfills the deterministic demand that all events have a cause, and at the same time fulfills the ethical demand that we be held responsible for our actions because we actually choose them. So if our judgment that a particular course of action is the objectively right one, is the reason that we act, then it can be said that both of these conditions are fulfilled.